Welcome, dear viewers, to a tale that blurs the line between the ordinary and the eerie. Picture a modest home nestled behind an old, weathered warehouse. This house, unassuming at first glance, holds secrets that have haunted my family for years. Let me take you through its peculiar layout, a maze that begins with the first door leading straight into the kitchen. From here, a narrow hallway branches off, directing you towards the bathroom and the living room. It's a layout designed for convenience, but one that has witnessed inexplicable events. Our story unfolds during my school days. Like any other day, I would return home, drop my backpack by the door, and make my way through the house. My family consisted of my two sisters and me. We shared a bond forged in the routine of daily life, yet beneath our normal interactions lurked a sense of unease. My eldest sister, the responsible one, often spent her afternoons in the living room, lost in the world of books and television. My younger sister, playful and carefree, usually occupied the small bedroom at the back of the house. As for me, I was just a typical student, balancing homework with moments of carefree fun. But it was the ordinary days that hid the most extraordinary secrets. Little did I know that our home, with its familiar nooks and crannies, was about to reveal a side of itself that we had never seen before. The walls that had watched us grow would soon witness events that defied explanation. Events that would change the way we saw our home forever. Stay with me as we delve deeper into the mysteries of this seemingly benign house, where the mundane masks, the supernatural, and the ordinary becomes the stuff of nightmares. This is just the beginning of our journey into the unknown. It was an afternoon like any other. I pushed open the front door, the familiar creak echoing through the house. I dropped my backpack by the door and made my way toward the kitchen, looking forward to a quick snack before diving into my homework. As I approached the living room, something caught my eye, a fleeting glimpse of a girl about my age walking from the living room into the kitchen. It was so brief, so quick, that I almost dismissed it as a trick of the light. But it wasn't. I paused, staring at the empty space where she had just been. My heart began to pound. The house was silent, except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. I walked into the kitchen, half expecting to find my younger sister there, perhaps playing a prank on me. But the kitchen was empty. The eerie stillness wrapped around me, making my skin prickle. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky and uncertain. There was no response. I stood there for a moment, trying to convince myself that I hadn't seen what I thought I had. After all, my sisters were the only ones at home, and they knew better than to sneak around like that. I retraced my steps to the living room, hoping to find my eldest sister there. She was sprawled out on the sofa, engrossed in a book. I hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Did you just go to the kitchen?" She looked up, confusion etching her features. "No, I've been here the whole time." "Why?" My stomach twisted into knots. I told her what I saw, expecting her to laugh or brush it off. Instead, she frowned, her expression mirroring my unease. "That's strange," she muttered, more to herself than to me. The unease in the house grew thicker, almost palpable. I couldn't shake the image of the girl from my mind. She had been so real, so vivid. And yet, there was no trace of her, no sound, no movement, nothing to suggest that anyone had been there. As the afternoon light faded, casting long shadows across the walls, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see her again. But she didn't reappear. The house remained silent, holding its secrets tight. And so, with a heavy heart and a mind racing with questions, I tried to go about my evening as normally as possible. Little did I know this was just the beginning of our unsettling encounters. Determined to get to the bottom of what I saw, I steeled myself and began a thorough search of the house. Every step felt heavier as I moved back towards the kitchen, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I checked every corner, every cabinet, even the pantry. Nothing. The kitchen was as it always was, mundane and ordinary. Yet now, it seemed to hold an ominous air. I moved onto the hallway, my eyes scanning the shadows, looking for any sign of the mysterious girl. The bathroom door creaked open as I pushed it, the sound echoing ominously. I flipped on the light and peered inside. Empty. Just the usual sight of our small bathroom, with its worn tiles and slightly dripping faucet. The unease gnawed at me, my mind racing with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Next, I made my way to the small bedroom at the back of the house. My younger sister's room was a chaotic mess of toys and clothes, yet it had a comforting familiarity. But today, it felt different, like an unseen presence lingered in the air. I hesitated at the door, my breath shallow. I took a step inside, half expecting to see the girl hiding among the stuffed animals or under the bed. But again, there was nothing, just the ordinary clutter of a child's room. Frustrated and increasingly anxious, I returned to the living room, where my eldest sister still lay on the sofa, her eyes now fixed on me with concern. "What did you see?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and fear. I described the girl again, every detail etched into my memory. She listened intently, her frown deepening. "We need to tell Mom and Dad," she said finally, but I knew they wouldn't be home for hours. We were on our own, left to grapple with this strange occurrence. I could see the unease mirrored in my sister's eyes, but she tried to stay calm, offering reassurances that felt hollow. As night began to fall, the shadows in the house grew longer and darker. Every creak and groan of the old house seemed amplified, each one making us jump. We decided to stick together, neither of us wanting to be alone in any part of the house. We settled in the living room, the TV providing a comforting background noise as we kept glancing towards the kitchen. The fear lingered, a constant, gnawing presence. We didn't know who or what the girl was, but her silent, fleeting appearance had left an indelible mark on us. The house, once a place of comfort and safety, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. And as the hours dragged on, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the girl was still there, just out of sight, waiting. As the minutes ticked by, I could see my sister growing more uneasy. She glanced at me, then back at the TV, which now seemed like a flimsy barrier against the unknown. "I haven't told you everything," she said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. I turned to her, my heart pounding faster. "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning in closer. She took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on a spot on the floor. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened," she confessed. "A few years ago, when our other sister still slept in her room, she had an experience that scared her so much she never went back to sleeping there." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had always wondered why our sister avoided that room, but she never talked about it, and we never pressed her for answers. "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling with anticipation. My sister hesitated, then began to recount the tale. It was late at night, and she was alone in her room. The door was locked, and she was getting ready to sleep. As she turned off the light and got into bed, she felt a strange presence. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but then she saw her. A little girl standing at the foot of her bed. The room seemed to grow colder as she spoke. Our sister was frozen with fear. The girl just stood there staring at her with eyes that seemed too old for her small frame. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. She just lay there, paralyzed, until the girl slowly faded away, disappearing into the shadows. My sister's words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. After that night, she never slept in that room again. She didn't tell us because she thought we wouldn't believe her, or worse, that it might somehow make it real again. I shuddered, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. The girl I had seen wasn't a figment of my imagination. She was a recurring presence in our home, one that had haunted my sister before me. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and fear. "I didn't want to scare you," my sister replied softly. "But now, I think we need to understand what's happening here. We can't keep pretending this isn't real." As night fully descended, the house felt like a different place, filled with echoes of unseen footsteps and whispers of the past. My sister and I sat in the living room, the weight of our combined experiences pressing down on us. We needed answers, and we needed to figure out what this ghostly girl wanted. The fear that had been a shadow now loomed large, and we knew that facing it was the only way to reclaim our home from the grasp of the unknown. The revelation about our other sister's encounter left us in a tense silence, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. We decided to stay together in the living room for the night, unwilling to face the oppressive darkness of our individual rooms. The hours dragged on, each minute punctuated by the creaks and groans of the old house settling, or was it something else moving in the shadows? As the night deepened, fatigue began to weigh on us. We were dozing off when a sudden sharp noise jolted us awake. It sounded like something, or someone, moving in the kitchen. My sister and I exchanged a terrified glance, the unspoken question clear: was the girl back? Gripped by a mix of dread and determination, we crept towards the kitchen, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath our feet. The kitchen light cast long, eerie shadows that danced on the walls. We paused at the doorway, holding our breath. The kitchen was empty, but the sense of being watched was overwhelming. Then we heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper coming from the hallway. It was faint, like a child's voice, carried on the wind. My sister grabbed my hand, her grip tight with fear. We followed the sound, our steps slow and cautious. The whispering grew louder as we approached our other sister's old bedroom, the one she had abandoned years ago. We stood outside the door, the whispering now clear and unmistakable. It sounded like a girl, softly speaking words we couldn't quite make out. Gathering all the courage we could muster, we pushed the door open. The room was dark, the only light coming from the hallway behind us. And then we saw her. The girl was standing by the window, her back to us. She was just as my sister had described her, small, with long dark hair and an aura of ancient sadness. She turned slowly to face us, her eyes meeting ours. They were deep, dark pools of sorrow, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming wave of compassion and fear. Before we could react, she vanished, dissolving into the air like mist. The room fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting slightly. My sister and I stood there, shaken and bewildered. "What does she want?" I whispered, more to myself than to her. My sister shook her head, equally at a loss. "I don't know, but we need to find out," she replied. The encounter had left us more determined than ever to uncover the mystery behind the ghostly girl. We couldn't continue living in fear, always looking over our shoulders. It was time to face the unknown head-on, to understand the ghost that haunted our home, and put an end to the terror that had plagued our family for so long. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, we knew our journey was far from over. The girl had shown herself again, but the reasons behind her presence remained elusive. Our resolve strengthened. We prepared ourselves for whatever revelations lay ahead, hoping that the truth, no matter how frightening, would finally bring us peace. The next morning, the events of the previous night weighed heavily on our minds. My sister and I knew we couldn't keep this to ourselves any longer. As soon as our parents returned home, we gathered everyone in the living room. The sunlight streaming through the windows felt out of place, too bright for the dark tale we were about to unfold. We took turns recounting our experiences, from my initial sighting of the girl to the eerie encounter in our sister's old room. Our parents listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. My younger sister, who had been silent up to this point, finally spoke up, her voice trembling. "I've felt her too," she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "I just didn't know how to tell you." The room fell silent, each of us lost in our thoughts. Our mother was the first to break the silence, her voice calm but firm. "We need to understand what's happening here. Ignoring it won't make it go away." Our father nodded in agreement, his usual skepticism replaced by a determined resolve. "We should look into the history of this house," he suggested. "There might be something we're missing." Over the next few days, we delved into research, seeking any clues that might explain the presence of the mysterious girl. We searched old records, spoke to neighbors, and even visited the local library. The more we dug, the more we realized how little we knew about our home's past. One evening, as we were sifting through a stack of old newspapers, my sister found an article that sent chills down our spines. It was about a family that had lived in our house decades ago. The article mentioned a tragic accident. A little girl had died under mysterious circumstances. Her name was Emily. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Could this be the same girl haunting our home? The resemblance was uncanny and the timeline matched. We felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief at having a possible explanation and sorrow for the young life lost so tragically. Determined to help Emily find peace, we decided to hold a small ceremony in her honor. We gathered in the living room, where we'd first seen her, and lit candles in her memory. We spoke softly, offering words of comfort and closure. "Emily, if you're here, we want you to know that you're not alone," my mother said, her voice gentle. "We hope you can find peace." As we stood there, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The air felt lighter, and a sense of calm washed over us. It was as if Emily's spirit was finally at rest, her presence no longer a source of fear, but a reminder of the fragile line between life and death. In the days that followed, the eerie occurrences ceased. Our home, once a place of dread and unease, felt warm and welcoming again. We knew that Emily's spirit had moved on, and in helping her find peace, we had also found our own. The journey had been terrifying and unsettling, but it had brought our family closer together, united by the shared experience of facing the unknown. And though the mystery of Emily had been solved, we knew that her story would remain a part of our family's history forever. Just as we began to settle back into our routine, believing the ordeal was behind us, something happened that shook us to our core. One night, a few weeks after our ceremony for Emily, we were all gathered in the living room, enjoying a rare moment of family peace. The evening was calm, the kind of tranquility we had longed for, but as the clock ticked towards midnight, a sudden chill swept through the room. The temperature dropped noticeably, and we could see our breath fogging in the air. We exchanged uneasy glances, the memory of Emily still fresh in our minds. Then we heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping like footsteps coming from the hallway. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears as the sound grew louder, closer. My father stood up, his face set in a determined expression. "Stay here," he instructed us, though we knew better than to let him face this alone. We followed him, moving as a unit, into the hallway where the sound originated. The tapping stopped abruptly, replaced by deafening silence. We reached the door to my sister's old bedroom, now a place of both fear and curiosity. The door was slightly ajar, a thin sliver of darkness visible through the crack. My father pushed it open, and we gasped in unison. The room was filled with an otherworldly glow, a soft, ethereal light that seemed to emanate from nowhere. And there she was. Emily stood in the center of the room, her figure translucent, bathed in that eerie light. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, shadowy figures began to materialize, forming a semicircle around her. They were indistinct, like wisps of smoke. But their presence was undeniable. Emily's eyes locked onto ours, and in that moment, we understood. She wasn't just a lost soul. She was a guardian of sorts, leading other spirits, guiding them to find peace. The shadowy figures seemed to pulse with an energy that filled the room, a palpable sense of longing and sadness. We stood there frozen, watching this spectral assembly. My mother, ever the empathetic heart of our family, stepped forward. "Emily," she called softly, "we're here to help." Her words seemed to resonate in the air, and Emily's expression softened. The shadowy figures began to fade one by one, as if our acknowledgement and understanding were enough to set them free. Emily turned towards the window, and with one final, lingering glance back at us, she and the remaining figures dissipated into the night. The room returned to its normal state, the temperature rising, the eerie light gone. We stood there, absorbing what we had just witnessed. It felt like a final chapter had been written, a conclusion to the story of Emily and the spirits she guided. Our house, once a battleground of fear and confusion, now felt like a sanctuary of peace and resolution. That night, we slept soundly for the first time in what felt like ages. We knew that Emily and the other spirits had found the peace they sought, and in doing so, they had given us the gift of tranquility. Our home was ours again, a place of warmth and safety, its haunted past now a poignant memory of the lives that had once touched ours. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in our home transformed entirely. The oppressive weight that had once settled in the corners of every room lifted, replaced by a sense of lightness and serenity. We had faced our fears, confronted the unknown, and in the process, forged stronger bonds with each other. Our conversations often turned to Emily, not with fear, but with a kind of reverent respect. She had been a part of our lives, a catalyst for change and understanding. We spoke of her with a sense of closure, knowing that our efforts had helped her find peace. The house no longer held secrets that chilled us. Instead, it was filled with memories that connected us to something greater than ourselves. One sunny afternoon, my family and I gathered in the backyard, enjoying a rare moment of relaxation. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions, but now we could finally breathe easy. As we sat there, my younger sister brought out an old photo album, one that had been tucked away in a dusty corner of the attic for years. We flipped through the pages, laughing at the pictures from our childhood, sharing stories and memories. It was a simple, joyous moment, one that underscored how far we'd come as a family. My sister pointed to a photograph of the house taken long before we had moved in. "Do you think Emily's family is in any of these pictures?" she asked. We spent hours sifting through the album, looking for any clues or connections, and then there it was, a faded black and white photograph of a little girl standing in front of our house. Her eyes, so familiar, seemed to gaze right through the photograph, her expression both haunting and serene. We knew it was Emily. Finding her picture felt like the final piece of the puzzle. It was as if she had left us a message, a token of her gratitude. We framed the photograph and placed it on the mantel, a symbol of the bond we had formed with her spirit. It served as a reminder of the journey we had undertaken, the fear we had conquered, and the peace we had helped bring about. As the seasons changed, our house became a place of warmth and laughter once more. The memories of our experiences with Emily and the other spirits lingered, not as shadows, but as stories that brought us closer together. We had learned that the past is never truly gone. It lives on in the places we inhabit, in the stories we tell, and in the spirits we remember. Our family's connection deepened, and we found strength in each other that we hadn't known before. We had faced the unknown together, and in doing so, discovered the resilience and love that held us together. Our home, once a place of fear, was now a haven of safety and love. Ulavusting, Lizaneska,